thank you all so much for being here again. My name is Natalie Ray. I directed the scene today from the play 1960. It was written by Ian Finley along with Murphey School company members of 2008. And so we're doing excerpts from that play today. The play was written in Murphey School's first season here at the Murphey School about the history of the building. Which is very important and integral to the history of Raleigh and Raleigh schools. So I'd like to just introduce the actors briefly and keep in mind that some actors will be playing multiple roles today. So you may see them play one part and then sit down and then play another part. So there's also quite a number of chorus type situations in this play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did they tell who they are, but also tell which roles they'll be playing?
Yes, yes. So I can go ahead and have Greg Paul kick us off.
Okay, I'm Greg Paul. I will be playing Willie York. That's typecasting. Governor Luther Hodges and some ensemble bits, a judge, Gilbert.
Hey, I'm Laura Jenkins. I'll be playing Harriet Stowe and some reporters.
Hi, my name is Brenda Allen. I will be playing John Chavis, Bill Campbell, and some ensemble bits as well.
I'm Dan Decker. I will do Chief Justice Earl Warren and Mayor Enloe from the city of Auburn.
I'm Tom Christensen. I will be a builder. I will be a judge. And then in the same scene, I will be Lewis Powell and Leroy Martin. You won't really be able to tell the difference between them because I haven't done that much research yet.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of combine those two roles.
Yeah, I'm Gus Allen, be playing a judge, a builder, as well as Tom Persall and Vic Fisher.
And I'm Jay Rochelle Fowler. I'll be playing the teacher.
And I'll note that the play is available on the vertical bookshelf outside, so if you want to read more of it, you can do that. All right, so without any further ado, yes, we'll go ahead and get started with 1960.
(1792), the year Raleigh was founded and declared the state capital.
New town, middle of nowhere. Representatives pouring in from all over the state with their families, but there were no schools.
John Chavis, graduate of Princeton University and Washington Academy, announces the establishment of Chavis Primary School in Raleigh. Education in Greek and Latin, mathematics and composition.
Chavis was the city's first great teacher. His students included sons of the legislature, future governors, and senators.
Admission limited to white males, tuition $2.50 a quarter to study between the hours of 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. Admission limited to black males, tuition $1.75 a quarter to study between the hours of 4 p.m. and 10 p.m.
Raleigh's first educator, a black man. Raleigh's first school open to blacks and whites.
And then, Lord, we went backwards. By the time of the Civil War, it was a crime for a black man to even own a book.
1896, Texas, the County Board of Education shall provide schools of two kinds, those for white children and those for colored children.
Plessy versus Ferguson. Separate but equal, the justices said. Restaurants and bathrooms and schools. But it was a nonsense phrase. Poor but rich, ignorant but wise. To be separate is not to be equal. But so it went. The century turned, amazing things happened. Wireless radios, electric light, and ignorance. And bigotry. And in Raleigh, a school was built.
Welcome to the Murphey Primary School.
The first Murphey School was built on this site in 1908 and burned down not long after.
So we rebuilt. You are sitting in the first fireproof public building in the city of Raleigh.
Solid brick and cement, even under the floors. Classrooms for a full 6 grades. And a separate auditorium, very modern.
Part of pine floors.
Foundations of Wake County granite.
Yes, the new Murphey School could withstand a fire or an earthquake. Lucky thing too, for what would happen here, far more earth shaking. 1954, the middle of a decade of change, the Supreme Court of the United States.
Today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. The segregation of children in public schools on the basis of race, even though the physical facilities may be equal, deprive children of equal educational opportunities.
We believe that it does.
Finally, the justices learned that equality must be complete or it's worthless. That anything short of that, anything diluted or conditional or separate isn't equality at all.
We conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place.
Separated educational facilities are inherently unequal.
School districts are required to implement a policy of integration with all deliberate speed.
With all deliberate speed. But not until the next autumn would the court even begin to hear arguments. Months passed, years, and the South was quick only to find ways to avoid the law.
Governor Luther Hodges, what you got for me, Tom?
Governor Hodges, I'm sorry, I was just in the middle of the report, wasn't expecting,
Well, I'm not supposed to be down here at all, am I, Tom? Nonpartisan commission, hi diddle diddle. Don't know I'm supposed to govern if they won't let me talk to anyone, so off the record, what you got for me?
well, we're working on it, Governor.
Not good enough. Legislature's in a lather. All they want to talk about, integration, segregation, consternation, colors getting louder, and the constituents are starting to panic. They want to close the schools, Tom. They want to just shut the system down, give the court a good slap. Representative Satterfield from Caswell, he just introduced the bill that would cut all funding for any school that entered.
Satterfield, of course he would. Well, he'd rather close all the schools than integrate.
I'd rather burn them to the ground. And he's not the only one.
Ignorant rubes don't even know what's in their best interest.
You mean the colors or the legislature? I can give you some good news, Tom.
Well, we've come up with a proposal. Now, this is off the record.
Off the record.
All right, now look at this map. It's all in the map. Census. In every community, there are certain lines, natural lines between those black and white communities. So we redistrict, redraw the school districts along those lines. We wouldn't be denying the Negroes the right to a white school. That's all the court said we couldn't do. Deny them.
What about these schools in the areas in between?
Some schools will be left empty and some over capacity, but what's going to be the bigger problem? More white kids or one Negro boy?
And the empty schools?
Rent them, lease them, knock them down.
And what about those families that are in the wrong areas?
We let them send their kids to abroad.
And we put the bill?
Money we spend on them anyway. Well, the numbers even out. Mostly, but this buys us time. And when things get sticky, sure, we let in a colored student where it won't make too many waves, There's only one thing.
What?
No, this isn't a bill. It's an amendment to the Constitution.
Now, wait, Tom, you're asking a lot.
Excuse me, sir, what's the purpose of this program?
It's an effort to preserve North Carolina's public schools.
If people approve of this program, will my child be forced to attend school with a member of another race?
Emphatically, no.
Is this an effort to defy the US Supreme Court? Didn't the Supreme Court say that children have to go to school with members of another race?
No,
Well, what did they say?
only that we cannot deny admission of a child to a public school solely on the basis of race. But we're not attempting to defy the court. We are law-abiding, decent people.
One law says you can go to school wherever you like. And one law says, no, you best not try any of that foolishness around here. And that was enough. 1956, 2 years after the Supreme Court ruling, not a single Black family has so much as glanced towards white schools. And then something happened.
The Raleigh Times, November 3rd, 1956. A Negro father said last night he will take legal action if necessary to enter his son into Joseph Daniel Junior High. Joseph H. Holt Sr. said he applied in writing for permission to enter his son Joe in school.
An application, a first step. The application was turned down, of course, but that was just fine. They would apply next year and the year after that, if necessary. The Holt's minds were made up. A year passed. Joe Holt got a year older, old enough now to attend high school. And again, his family applied for a transfer, this time to Broughton High School, one of the oldest and most prestigious schools in the city. School of governors and senators, the citadel on the hill, and the Holt's came knocking.
By the fall of 1959, for almost 4 years, the Holts had applied, filed suit, appealed, moved on.
Still traveling across town to Ligon High School, Joe was about to enter his senior year.
And the US Supreme Court is about to hear their final appeal.
Price had been great.
Obscene calls, media harassment, bomb threats.
Even friends in the American community had began to distance themselves for fear of reprisal from whites.
September 6, 1960, here in the auditorium of the Murphey School, the school board met to open the door. It looked a little different back then. The floor here sloped upward, row upon row of oak back seats. The stage was there behind this wall. You'll see the proscenium. They each took a seat in the auditorium down front. Mayor Enlow, Vic Fisher, Lewis Powell, Helen Watts Stowe, Leroy Martin, Willie York. There was only one member absent.
All right, coming to order. Good evening, everyone. Martin, do we have a quorum?
Yep, as you see, our only absence is Mr.
Where's Fred?
He's out in Hartnett County this week, I think.
Are we certain that we want to discuss this motion when the only Negro member of the board is missing?
Oh, we can go ahead. We got a quorum.
Just seems funny.
No reason to put it off any longer. School started a week ago.
What, were you aware that he was gonna be gone, really?
What do you mean?
When you brought this motion before this board, were you aware that our one Negro member who has always pushed for desegregation was not gonna be here?
I don't see what that has to do with anything.
It doesn't seem material to the point at hand if we're really looking.
Just might have wanted to be here. He might have wanted to raise the motion himself.
Well, he's not, and school started, and we are here. So Mr. Mayor,
Is there anything else?
No, Mr. Mayor, just.
All right, then, well, as you know, we're meeting to discuss the application of the family for the 3 children. They're all going to St. Monica's right now, the colored Catholic school. The older children, Ralph and Mildred, are applying for transfer to Hugh Morrison. They're in 8th and 9th grades. And then there's Bill, who's applying to transfer here to Murphy. He's in 2nd grade.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I brought this up earlier, but we only received these applications 2 weeks ago.
I think there's been enough time to review.
No, it's just that the regulations say that transfer requests have to be made within 10 days after the end of the prior term. Now, that would have been back in June.
No, it doesn't.
No, I only bring it up because that was the reason the first Holt application was denied. They missed the
I
deadline.
think there may have been other reasons. I haven't reviewed that.
But it doesn't apply to this case.
No,
The regulation says the transfer requests within the public system have that deadline. These kids are going to private school, so it doesn't apply.
well, I just wanted to voice the concern.
Mr. York is right. This is a transfer into the system, not within it.
It's a viable reason. I think it will hold.
So I think we can go ahead
Is
and
there anything else? Anything we didn't cover in the earlier meeting? Anything we're overlooking?
Well, just to be thorough.
keep us here all night, Vic.
Well, it's just that this application isn't on the appropriate form.
You're concerned about,
Which is the same filing error that the Holtz made.
Mr. Mayor, we've already discussed all these issues. They're technicalities. Are we gonna get bogged down here or are we gonna get something done?
Vic.
No, that's fine.
Okay, well, all right then. Mr. York,
I have two motions. May I?
go ahead.
All right, first of all, I move that two older children's applications to Morrison be denied. The school's already overcrowded. We're looking for ways to decrease the population there, not increase it.
I'll second that. I think it would be unwise to assign any child to Hugh Morrison now unless it's absolutely necessary because of the school's crowded condition and limited playground facilities.
It's a high school. Do they even have a playground?
I think it would clearly be in the best interest of these children and of the schools. I propose that we affirm instead their assignment to Ligon High, where they've already started this year.
The motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. York, your second motion, please.
Okay, who's taking minutes?
I am willing.
All right. Regarding the younger Campbell, William, in light of the Supreme Court ruling and all that's come after, I move that William Campbell be admitted immediately to the second grade at Murphey School. The fundamental right to receive the best education at the most accessible school can no longer be denied. It is not an idea whose time has come, but an idea whose time has long been overdue.
I will second the motion.
A motion for admission of William Campbell to Murphy Elementary School has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. William Campbell is assigned to Murphy Elementary effective immediately. He will therefore become the first Negro student to attend a white public school in the city of Raleigh. Meeting adjourned.
On September 8, 1960, a caravan of cars pulled away from the plain brick house on Eden Street and drove to the Murphey School.
A crowd had gathered. White men packed 5 or 6 to a car, ringed the school.
The air was charged with hate and fear. White children clung to their mothers at the door, crying.
Car rolled to the curb and the family climbed out.
Ralph Sr. took one of his son's hands. June took the other.
Bill Campbell?
Crowds were there. They were yelling and I just kept my head down, not wanting to look into the faces filled with hatred.
Hold your hand up, little bit. Hold your hand up. Just count the stairs. For 5 years, he walked the halls alone.
Older kids sometimes cornered him behind the auditorium curtain, slapped him around.
Others spat in his face, called him names as he walked the halls.
In his own neighborhood, he became estranged from his friends who attended all-black schools in other parts of Raleigh.
All night, the phone rang incessantly. Threats of bombs and fires. Often the family fled into the darkness and the safety of a friend's home.
1960. And the school board met in this room to open a door, just a crack. But on the other side, The keys to the kingdom were freely given to all. Maybe. But every application was still a fight. Of the 66 applications for transfer in 1961, 8 were accepted. And so on for 10 more years. Each September, a handful admitted Mr. Pearsall's plan to buy time proved all too effective. It wasn't until 1971, 17 years after the Supreme Court ruling, that the school board devised a plan to bus students across community lines to ensure at least some racial diversity in the schools. Even then, it was met with fierce opposition. It's never a simple story, is it? But history is not meant to be short nor sweet. It's meant to be something we learn from. 1960? No, child. The story didn't start there. Didn't end there either. The story will never end as long as there is injustice. As long as there is discrimination towards anyone, for any reason, anywhere on God's great earth, the lesson continues. 1960? 1960 was a door, and so is today.
Thank you all for coming. Woo. Geez, how do you guys do this? I'm really glad. I'm Mary Hartwell, on behalf of Forest Park Commons. I welcome you to our second forum of 2024. Thank you, Jerome Davis, for getting on board with this program with no hesitation and for hosting us here. Special thanks goes to Natalie for directing the reading tonight and all of you. Here we are in Murphey School auditorium, and I just want to say, if you haven't felt it yet, there is an amazing vibe here. So much has happened here and continues to happen. Tonight we've heard some readings from 1960 about a significant part of Raleigh's history that rose to a turning point right here in this space and at this school. Now we'll learn more about burning coal, about their history, and we'll learn about the conversion of this auditorium to Burning Coal's home from the architect and the builder. And I'd like to give a formal introduction to Jerome now. Jerome Davis co-founded Burning Coal Theater in 1995 with his wife, Simi Kastner. They moved to Raleigh in 1996 and did their first production here in 1997. Since then, Jerry and Cindy have grown the company from a $30,000 annual budget to a budget of approximately $600,000. They've moved the company into this historic auditorium, having raised more than $1.5 million to renovate it in 2008. And they managed to get through the theater's first 25 years entirely debt-free. Burning Coal has also performed in New York City, in London, England, at the Piccolo Spoleto Festival in Cleveland, Ohio, and at the Capitol Fringe Festival in Washington, D.C. And as Jerry told us earlier, he and Cindy moved into their Groveland Avenue house about 7 years ago. So, Jerry.
So, Mary, do you want me to sit or stand, or what do you want to do? We're going to set up chairs.
Comfortable.
Well, we're gonna bring Greg and Judith up too, is that right? So I think we should probably pull chairs up.
Okay.
Can we do that, Greg? This is. So Mary, first, talk about the building.
How you came to come to Raleigh, and anything you want to tell us about the history of the.
Well, it was a fantasy, a dream of mine for years. I'm originally from the South. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and I grew up in a little rural community about 30 miles southeast of Nashville, where there wasn't a whole lot of art. There was lots of fast food factories and farms, and all of that's great in certain circumstances. But I wanted to have a life in the arts from a very early age, and I knew fairly soon that I wanted to run a theater. A lot of people, when they're bored in class as a child, they'll doodle, geometric patterns or faces or something like that. I would doodle seasons, I would be putting plays together and trying to imagine what would happen if we moved the crucible into that slot. Oh, that would be really good, and so that's not the normal behavior, I don't think, but it stuck with me from, throughout my life. I went to college, I got a degree in theater, and then I moved to New York City, and I spent about almost a dozen years there working as an actor, mostly in regional theaters and things like that, but doing some work in New York as well, and developed that hard muscle that one develops living in a place like New York for any period of time. And then I met my wife at a New Year's Day brunch that an actor friend had thrown, and my second question to her after, tell me about yourself, was, you want to move south with me and start a theater? And to my astonishment, she said yes. She had a background in scene design. She had wanted to be a scene designer. She had gone to Northwestern for a while, but Northwestern in the 70s had this lovely idea that women should not be involved in technical theater, and they let her know it in no uncertain terms. And this is one of the great theater schools in the world at that time, Northwestern, and so she was very disillusioned, and she let them, sort of run her out. So she ended up getting degrees in computer science, which was kind of rare in the 70s, and painting, and then those came together as the internet age and the computer age sort of formulated. Those two skills sort of merged into one very useful skill, and she became very successful. When I met her, she was running a major division of Oracle software, and she's now at Fidelity and has been there for a long time, and she pays a lot of our bills, and not the theater's bills, but our personal bills. But she's an artist at heart, and those of you who know her know that. And so anyway, so we looked around. We didn't want to go back to my home because some North Carolinians said you can never go home again, and we believed him. And so, but we found that we wanted to go south, and we found in Raleigh and in North Carolina a state that had a background in the arts, particularly what I call the tactile arts, things like pottery and quilt making and things like that. Music has been very big here, but the theater didn't. The theater felt like it could still use what I wanted to bring to the table, and so we chose Raleigh, and we're very, very happy that we did. If you don't know, our not-for-profit organizations like ours have 3 granting agencies that we can apply to each year: the City Arts Commission, the United Arts Council, which is a county-wide organization, and then the State Arts Council. And most theaters don't have more than one of those, and we've got 3, so that's been very helpful. And of course, a lot of that is your taxes, so thank you for that as well. And we started out very small. We had most of our budget the first year was wedding gifts, that we had received, and we went slow, and we have tried to maintain an upward arc, but not to push too hard where finances are concerned. but to push really hard where the art is concerned. And I think we've managed to do that over the years. This is our 16th year in this building. And before that, we were an itinerant company. We did plays everywhere. I'll tell you one quick story about that, and then I'll have Greg and Lewis come up and start talking some. But in our first season, we ended the year, we did a play called Pentecost by David Edgar, the great British playwright, who most people know for Nicholas Nickleby, you know, that big 8-hour long thing. Well, Pentecost is harder to do than Nicholas Nickleby, although it's not 8 hours long, but it's an incredibly difficult play to do. And we did it in an unair-conditioned high school gymnasium in North Raleigh in June. And we built it right in the basketball arena. We built a scaffolding on 3 sides. So there was a ground row of seats and a 3-foot-high row of seats and a 6-foot-high row of seats. So it's very steeply raked. And then the stage was on the other side, but it was a thrust stage. And we sold out pretty much every performance of it. Nobody left at all. I think one couple left on a Sunday matinee. And after the show, I registered the temperature. It was 110 degrees. I don't know how people didn't fall over. But the last, I'm going to tell the story. The last performance was on a Sunday afternoon. And I was feeling my oats a little bit. You know, we get great reviews. We packed the house. People were raving about the play. And I got up on stage and made a curtain speech before the show that was a little more arrogant than I should have done. And I walked off the stage and I heard the first line of the play, which is an actor says, "So this is it." And the second thing I heard was a 16-year-old kid in the top row stand up and projectile vomit over a good third of the audience. He had taken something the night before. He was part of a program at, I won't say the university, but it's in Durham. He had taken something the night before and got sick and puked all over about a third of the audience. So I'm standing outside the wall of the scaffolding, and it's like a scene from Exodus, you know, racing out and heading to the you know, these old bathrooms they had in their cinder block bathrooms. And the stage manager comes running up to me going, "Do we stop? Do we stop?" And I said, no, we'll never get it started back. Keep going. And I think she hates me to this day for that, but she spent the first act crawling around on her hands and knees with a bottle of 409 and a roll of paper towels trying to get the smell out. And she couldn't have So at intermission, I've been hiding, you know, at intermission, I went into the men's room in the cinder block bathroom, and there was a 65-year-old man, big guy, tall guy, standing there at the sink, washing his shirt out in the sink, rinsing it out. And he turns to me and he goes, "This is great. What are you guys doing next?" Right sitting. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of, you know, some of the hurdles, but also the perseverance, you know, that I think has been helpful to us over the years. Keep going, you know, and that's what we've done. I want to introduce Greg Paul. I'll introduce Greg next, and so many of you know Greg. He started Greg Paul Builders in 1985. And they specialize in residential and light commercial stuff. Today, Greg Paul Builders has completed over 80 architect designed residences, hundreds of renovations, and dozens of historic reservations. Greg Paul Builders has received 2 North Carolina Architect House of the Year awards. It's been awarded multiple Sir Walter Raleigh Appearance Awards. We got that thanks to Greg as well, including the Best Community Appearance Award for the Murphey School auditorium renovation in 2008, and again for the Montford Hall Heights House hotel renovation in 2022. So very recently, Greg has appeared at Burning Coal and on this stage, but also other places many times over the years, including the premiere of 1960 in our first season back in 2008, 2009. One of his favorite productions was a 2014 production of the David Edgar trilogy of plays, which includes Pentecost, the one I was just talking about, the two other plays, The Prisoner's Dilemma and The Shape of the Table. We took it, he's wearing the t-shirt today, thankfully, and I appreciate that, Greg, but we took that production and 38 actors, almost all Raleigh-based actors, to London for a month. And we housed them, we flew them over there. We raised $250,000. I still don't know how we did this, and we took them over there and we got a huge number of really good reviews, including a 4-star review from Michael Billington, who at that time was the Dean of London Theatre Critics, writing for The Guardian. And we did those 3 plays in repertory for a month at the Cockpit, which is a theater in central London. Greg served as a general contractor for our renovation here, and I dare say that without him, none of us would be sitting here tonight, and I'm pretty sure the building wouldn't be sitting here tonight either. So Greg, Paul, thank you, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. I saw Pentecost at I think it was the Fletcher Academy.
Yeah.
That's not
Called the Achievement School.
Yeah, that's called it, yeah. And then it was, but it was not the first show I saw. What was the one you did at Pittman Auditorium?
Love's Labor's Lost.
Love's Labor's Lost. And that's how I was first introduced to Burning Coal. My daughter had been bitten by the theater bug some years before, and she and I had been doing shows at Raleigh Little Theater, and her mentor there suggested that she work backstage at this new company, which was Burning Coal. And so she was an assistant stage manager, and I went to see that show. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with that auditorium, but it's, you know, it's kind of an arc with a stage down in front, and about half of the show was actually behind us in the balcony, and people behind us, and just all. So it was a whole new theater experience for me to be, you know, to be right in the action, and that's what I love about this place, is that there's not a bad seat in the house, and that you know you can practically smell every actor.
Some more than others.
But anyway, so I was thoroughly bitten by that. It was a few years later, I got my first role with Burning Coal. It was as a French maid. I got some pretty good roles over the years, and yes, the David Edgar trilogy was the height of my career in this realm. And I think it was 2004 or 5 when Jerry and Cindy first brought me here, and it was pretty dismal. I mean, there was that much dust on everything, and a lot of the ceiling was falling, and the plaster was falling off the walls, and the space had been vacant since 1976 when they closed the school. The classroom wings were renovated in the 90s for senior housing, and thanks to Ralph Campbell, who you heard mentioned in the show tonight, and Steve York, who the son of Willie York, who was the mayor at the time in the early 80s. A roof got put on this building, this part of the building in the mid 80s, which kept it from completely falling down. If it hadn't gotten that new roof, we would definitely not be sitting here. So that's kind of a little full circle story that I like to be sure to tell. Anyway, so we saw this, and it was a little daunting partly because this one, what they really needed was a black box theater like this, and obviously the stage was pretty small. And, it just, how do you even make a space like this accessible anymore? We'd had a mile of ramps, somewhere inside or outside, and we don't even, have the right to any of the property outside of the building footprint, so it needed some creative thought. Enter Lewis Cherry. Fortunately, Barry and Lewis had been at the School of Design together in the early '80s, and so she knew him well enough to approach him with this possibility, and Lewis was gracious enough to offer his services pro bono.
Wow.
Well, and Greg too.
The solution was masterful, lowering the floor, and allowed us to have the kind of height that we have, and to allow the addition of the balcony, which adds about 60% more seats in the space, and it just makes it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Lewis. Lewis has been practicing architecture in North Carolina since 1983. He was trained in literature at Duke, art at East Carolina, and architecture at State. He was elected to the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects. That's FAIA. It's a big deal. In 2009, Cherry Huffman Architects, PA, was founded by Lewis and Dan Huffman in 1992, and was selected 2009's North Carolina Firm of the Year by the NCAA. Lewis has served on the Board of Trustees for the North Carolina Museum of Art, the Contemporary Art Museum of Raleigh, and was founder of the Moore Square Museum of Middle School Community Garden. Lewis has taught periodically at the School of Design at State, and for over 20 years, teaching design studios and professional practice. Lewis Cherry Architecture, founded in 2013, is a small design practice focusing on modern residential, commercial, and institutional design. Lewis is an active visual artist working in the mediums of painting, photography, and filmmaking. Lewis served as our architect, and he is a former neighbor of ours. He lived on West Park Drive for a number of years. Come on up.
Great to be in this space. I don't know about this POC guy. Well, first of all, my introduction to Vernon Cole was my receptionist was Mary Floyd. And she was in Pentecost, right?
Yes, she was.
Yes, I saw that production as well. I probably didn't even know that.
I didn't.
And I was pretty blown away at the energy. I mean, just the palpable energy of a community theater, and really well done. And of course, I knew Mary very well. We spent many hours together in studio in grad school, and then so when you came to me, now my recollection is you were working with somebody about some planning or something, but anyway, it was just sort of like presented like we really don't know what to do with this, and so I was very excited. The things that motivate me about being an architect are creating spaces that add to people's lives. You know, just to do, like, I really am not that interested in doing work just for somebody to make some money. or, you know, just to turn over a building. I don't really take on those types of jobs. And I love libraries and civic spaces and spaces where, in restaurants, I've designed a lot of restaurants in Raleigh, and it's a similar impulse of places where people can be together and share an experience that's powerful and meaningful and pleasure, you know, brings pleasure. And so I was super excited about being able to be part of a team. And then I was introduced to Curtis Casfang, who Curtis is not here. And I just want to sort of speak on his behalf a bit because he was a critical member of this group, which was really us and Simi
And Mary.
and Mary. But so Curtis is a theater designer worldwide. His practice, theater collaborative consultancy
Or something like
Yeah.
that.
They all work in different places where they want to live, but they collaborate together on very important theater projects across the world, really. And it just so happened that Curtis was here and was very excited about.
He lives 3 blocks away.
Yeah, I see him all the time. But, so it really took his very precise understanding of the metrics that are involved with making a theater space work in terms of angle of the lights, the grid that you have to hang everything from, the risers, and knowing how many, what height. These were metrics that I wouldn't know as an architect. It's not, that's a spectrum. And so Curtis made me feel really good. You know, I wasn't gonna screw that up because he could make sure that all of those things were right. And the lights, the sound, the basic geometry, that was really Curtis's contribution, not to mention how to accomplish those things and with a minimum of cost and impact on the building kind of process. So that's kind of setting the stage, and Jerry kind of told my real punchline story about the aha thing was because this was like a puzzle that kind of didn't seem solvable. And then in walking into space, it just really occurred to me that abandon the front and create a side entrance and make everything level, pull everything down. And now we have a beautiful geometry for a box of, you know, that is a surround kind of experience. And so that was very important. But then the things that funny how certain kind of details stick with you. And I don't know if you guys will remember this, but we could not figure out how to get this balcony in this space. I mean, it didn't fit exactly. And so what we finally, like, if you start at the top, you know, or I mean, I'm sorry, if you start at the bottom, there's a certain height where, you know, you've got to have clearances for people and everything. And then if you work down from the top, you've got to have clearances. And what that left was just a sliver. And if you notice, that balcony is a sliver. And so we actually worked with Chuck Lyset, the structural engineer, on that part of it. But we had to just create everything in the width of that beam. So it was all the supports of the floor and the floor thickness and everything.
And with no columns.
Hmm?
And with no columns.
Exactly, right, exactly. So yeah, very good point. And so it has to float in here. And also how just to create a railing that was just at the right kind of transparency and heights of everything so that those seats work. But those are the thing that's what I really remember is working out those details, because that's what actually had to happen to make it work. But then the other, and it really is gratifying to come here every time I do, because it really has changed. And yeah, and it was a bit of, well, renovating buildings is, and this is actually true of, I think, sort of an occupational hazard of our architects is to want to do too much and want to like add. And this was not a project of adding, it was about trying to take everything away that isn't absolutely necessary. That's a kind of a nice budget constraint in a way sometimes. There's no temptation to, later things, but I just remember feeling that this space would have this energy that it does have. And it actually, spaces have energy. And of course, people add the energy too, but also I do think that there's, and you could call it feng shui or something, that spaces have a certain power. And I really believe the space has that. And it's, I think, who knows, it could be the history. I mean, as part of it. It could be the labor of laying these bricks and then exposing that and sort of peeling back all the layers. And it could be also this architectural expression of how this balcony is made, because it had to be so carefully thought about, not like adding moldings and stuff, but so carefully thought about this that it's precisely done. And I think that that labor of love and thought ends up showing. And so I'm really proud and happy to have been a participant in the creation of such a wonderful.
The acoustics are terrific in the space too. I know we had an acoustician check it out at one point. I was just going to tell you one tiny little story. I was standing out in the lobby once a performance was ending and the applause died down and the doors burst open and a woman came walking past me. She didn't look at me. She didn't even realize I was there, I think, but I heard her say as she walked out, "That room loves a play."
That's a
Yeah, I held on to that, and that's all yours and Greg's and Mary's and Curtis's, do. I was going to ask Greg a question. I asked you once why you had done this. Why you had taken on this project. You remember? You gave me a very simple, straightforward answer. Do you remember the 2-word answer?
Little legacy.
Yeah. That
Little legacy. It's a little legacy of mine.
it's one of many little legacies of Greg's, but what I love about that idea is that it's something we can all grab hold of. The Elon Musks of the world are going to go to the moon and whatever, and we're not ever really going to do that. None of us. If you are, please leave your card behind. Get you off the mailing list, but the idea of little legacies is something we can all do and probably all have done, but something I think should be acknowledged more often. So I really love that turn of phrase, Greg, and I often quote you on that. Curtis, you did the library over at the Village District as well, I believe. Was that your company?
I did.
Yeah. Have you done other arts facilities?
Yes, I pretty recently did an art center in Wilson that was taking a department an old department store. I think it was Roses or Bell maybe, but, and that's a community arts center, there, pretty recently.
Is it loaded with Wallace Simpson?
Well, it's just about a block from the Worthy Park, so Wilson is very much all about
Yeah.
being the arts as the
Does anybody have any questions? I mean, maybe that's, yeah.
How is the rest of the space used in this building? Is it still apartments? You said it was apartments.
The building is a U shape. We're one leg of the U, and then the other two legs are the old classrooms, which were converted into low-income senior housing in 1991, I think it was, Greg. And as Greg said, Smead York, whose father is the man who raised the motion that we heard about in the play, he was a big part of that. He was mayor at the time, I think, and he wanted the legacy to remain in evidence. And so he helped to make sure that this building didn't go under the bulldozer. But yeah, it's now low-income senior housing. They're very good neighbors.
How did you get where did burning coal come from? How did you come up with that name?
Well, it's not easy to come up with a name that hasn't already been used or isn't tried. And, you know, and so it was not easy. It took Cindy and I spent 6 months or so trying, throwing out different things, and we were never happy. And one day she pointed at the Bible, which I keep by my bedside table. I haven't read it in a while, but I do keep it there, and she said, well, what about that? Isn't there something in there? You're always reading that thing and that. And I said, I bet there is something in there, but I happened to, I dog-eared the Bible when I was reading it, and the next chapter was Romans 12. And Romans 12:20 has a verse in it that says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him drink. To do so will be like bringing burning coals upon his head. And for the longest time, I thought, well, that's kind of a grim, but she said, no, it's doing good. It's enacting change through positive works, through good works. And to my astonishment, this is one other little story that Greg can back me up on. When we got a pretty significant amount of that money that we raised from the city council, and it was almost all, no offense to anyone here, but it was almost all Republican at the time. I think maybe 6 of the 8 were Republican. And we went and sat in their offices at their other businesses, and many of them asked that exact question. And when I would get to the point where they would say, oh, 1220, that's the one that goes, and they knew it, and they also liked it. And we got a unanimous vote from that city council on this funding. It ended up, there were 2 versions of it, but it ended up being almost $500,000. So about a third of the money to do this renovation came from the city council. And so that's where it came from. And, I don't talk about that unless I'm asked, but I do think it's a vivid image, and one that is applicable to any artistic endeavor. I hope it is. Anyone? Other questions? Yes.
You have just told a beautiful story of magic and reality about theater, architecture, creativity, and it just goes everywhere. And I hate for it to leave when you leave. Have you all considered or talked about collaborating on a memoir or looking something about this? It's a beautiful story.
No, we haven't talked about that.
Well,
We should.
or a play,
Yeah, characters.
Well, I was thinking of a film and maybe Rob Lowe. Yes, sir.
An observation or a statement and then a question for you. The observation is my wife and I, Nancy, we're friends with Chuck Greer-Lyser, and I remember Chuck talking about the thinness of this upper level. he is so proud of this, and I'm so glad. Often structural engineers don't get recognized like architects. And so he is very proud of this, I just gotta say. So my question is, the reading y'all did tonight, the dialogue is that dialogue based on records or like that?
Well, Ian Finley, the playwright, did a lot of research and to find out the truths, more so with the Joel Holt angle, because Joel Holt is still with us to this day, and but yeah, there were minutes of the 1960 school board.
That's what I was wondering. So they looked at those?
Yeah.
There's actually quite a substantial part of the play that's about Joel that you couldn't.
Yeah.
This was such a tiny bit speaking from the play. I hope you do it again sometime, on anniversary or something.
We were thinking about it for the 15th anniversary season, but COVID seemed to be pushing against that idea. And so maybe for the 20th year, which would be 2028. So that's soon. Yeah, we did a lot of research. We did a lot of interviews with people. A lot of people were still alive from that era. There was one really moving one that I was going to quickly mention. There was a man who had been the bail bondsman for the African-American community. And he had, during the civil rights marches and things, he had never gone out onto the marches. And, people said, well, you can't do that because then there'll be nobody to bail us out of prison. So you gotta sit tight. But it haunted him. And he said, he was very near death. In fact, he died soon after we did the interview. He said, it just haunts me that I never got arrested, that I never put my neck on the chopping block for that community, and so I don't know, I could relate to that. I could imagine myself feeling that same way if I had been in his shoes, We found a lot of stories like that, a lot of amazing stories. Yes.
First of all, I want to thank all of you that were involved. It's a gift to Raleigh, to each of us. And secondly, I want to know when you lowered the floor.
Well, so the original structure sloped from about the base of the stage right there up to, you'll see how the level of the door is out in the lobby, but there was just a little 8-foot deep lobby area, and everything here was built on a wood structure, which was very termite. So we basically removed that with buckets. It was just fell apart. So that was one of the few bits that we actually had sweated equity from the company. But one Saturday we came in and stripped all the plaster off the brick walls, and another day we took just the wood and loaded it into the dump trucks, and then we did have to grade down to the point where we could start building back. There's a concrete floor about 4 inches below this surface right here, and then there's a wood substrate and several layers and about 600 layers of black paint. We rehearsed it here last night, read through the play, and they painted it again afterwards. They painted it yesterday. So yeah, I think it's mostly paint.
I could ask Greg to look at some other theaters, that he said to me, what do you want it to look like? And I said, well, I think there were 3. And I thought Greg would go on the internet, and look at them or take pictures or something like that. But he went there. You went to 2 of those 3, didn't you?
Yeah. What's that one in Minneapolis?
No, it was that very avant-garde company called, I'm going to lose it now. But they're not in existence anymore. They had this beautiful Well, you can.
It was an old warehouse space that had, it had very similar vibe to this. And it had these great big rolling fire doors, they closed right before the show started.
And then Trinity Rep in Providence too. Which is a theater I had the good fortune of working at for a year when I was acting out of New York. It's, Providence is about a 3-hour drive from New York City. And I heard that there was an audition there, and I was trying to get anyone to go with me. I was going to rent a car and drive up to Providence, go to these auditions, and everybody kept saying, Providence, why would you want to work in Providence? And I said, because it's Trinity Rep. It's one of the great theaters in America, and they didn't know it. None of my acting friends knew it. And
So Adrian Hall, the
wild man,
Jerry was actually able to get him to come here and do his rendition of All the King's Men. So Adrian actually knew Robert Penn Warren, who wrote the book. And Adrian adapted it for the stage pretty much as we rehearsed it. In fact, there were several lines that I said on opening night that I had never said before. He put me aside backstage and said, this is what I want you to say differently tonight.
He was constantly working on it. He kept others. I actually made it well into his 90s. But just to give you an idea of how crazy Adrian was, he in that first rehearsal, you may remember this. There were about 30 of us sitting around a room in a little warehouse up in North Raleigh, and he was trying to get across the idea of self-loathing to one of the actors, and he's stammering. He's from Texas. He's from Van, Texas, East Texas, and he spoke like this. Even in his later years, he said, "It's like I gave my mother's stockings to the whore." And that was how he described self-loathing. The typical note. Anyway, he ran the Trinity Rep in the 60s and 70s, and in 1980 he won the first Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater. That's when they started giving out that award. And a few years later, the Dallas Theater Center, which is a multi-million-dollar, it's like the Guthrie of the South, called him and said, we'd like you to come and take over the Dallas Theater Center. His mother was ill. She lived 2 hours away from there. And Adrian said, only if you let me keep Trinity. And so he ran Trinity Rep and the Dallas Theater Center for 6 years. He ran these two theaters that are 1,000 miles apart. That's how crazy this guy was. Anyway, he had this beautiful theater that he had built. He and his technical, designer, set designer, Eugene Lee, who later did the first Sweeney Todd, the first Stephen Sondheim Sweeney Todd. He does all the Saturday Night Live sets. Even today, he's the in-house Saturday Night Live director, art director. And so Greg went there and saw what I had seen there in that building, and he came back and transferred it here through language and through his work, and created something similar to it, I think. Yes.
How do you decide which plays to do? How does that happen?
That is a mystery.
This answer is not as politically correct as it used to be, but I do what I like. If I read a play and it moves me, I believe that it might move you too. And if it doesn't, I don't think it might move you. And so that I don't know how else to do it. I don't think play selection by committee is a great idea, to be honest with you.
Is it only your decision, Jerry?
Well, I'm open for suggestions. Giving me plans, and I went, wow, that's great, we need to do that. I travel a lot, as you know, because you've been with me a number of times. I go to London a lot, I try to go to New York and see things. And I see other things here, and I read a lot. I have something like 4,000 plays at home, just a lot of reading and seeing stuff. And at some point, you just start thinking, maybe now's the time to do that one. And then you just trust yourself, trust that you. And I also try to read, I'm taking up too much of the conversation here, but I try to read a lot of other stuff too, like biographies and history books and current events, things, political stuff, and just try to understand what's going on in the world. And if you have that pool of thought and this pool of thought, and if they merge together, then sometimes you end up with the right play at the right time. So that's the hope anyway, knock on wood. Anything else for Greg or Lewis or Mary? Yeah.
Greg, you want to talk about, the constraints on the outside of the building, specifically the entrance? Because we take this floor down, but we couldn't.
Right, so the building still belongs to the state of North Carolina. The Raleigh, or the city of Raleigh, originally leased the ground under it and built the building, which still belongs to the state. And they recently re-upped their 100-year lease. Sometime in the last 10 years, so they got it for another 100 years. And then Downtown Housing Improvement Corporation, which renovated the rest of the building, leases from the city of Raleigh, and we sublease from them. So we're like a fourth tier tenant in this place. So we don't have much in the way of rights, but so our rights basically go up to the outside surface. Well, it's also a historic building, which means that there's the State Office of Historic State Historic Preservation Office. It has a say in what can happen on the outside, which is basically nothing. And so we were able to get the canopy and the entrance steps and small ramp added to the building. That was it. Everything else is just maintenance. We're responsible for the roof and the glass in the windows, but not the structure itself.
So we couldn't change the front facade.
That's right. We had to leave the portico on the front, which, it's the steps to nowhere. It's kind of it's unfortunate that we can't use it for much of anything, but it did allow us to, because we could do anything within reason to the interior. In fact, we did get permission to do what we did from the state about 4 years after we completed the renovation.
We had been warned not to ask them, that I think the way it was put is someone will raise a red flag because they think that might make a good office for me. And so we don't ask them, and we didn't. And sure enough, we got a letter. I didn't remember it being that long. I think it was 4 years. Yeah. And so we all went in and we laid out our drawings and stuff, and they said, okay. That was pretty much how the meeting went, but yeah, that was better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah, that just reinforces what Lewis's brilliant solution for lowering the floor allowed us to do. Just made it good stuff.
Everything works in the building, every little square inch of it is being used for something. It's way too small, for a theater. It's only 4,000 square feet, which is about twice the size of your average house in Raleigh. And so it's not, we really have to maximize every inch of it, and these two, and Murray and Curtis, helped that to happen. Without that effort, I think we probably would be up a creek right now too. Any other questions? Any other thoughts about it?
What's the audience capacity for typical show?
We keep it normally at what you see now is about 100 downstairs and about 35 to 40 up on the balcony. If we plug in the fourth side, as we're going to do for our next production, we can get up to 175, but still quite a small space relative to, you know, the big theaters downtown are 1,800, 2,200, something like that. But it's intimate, and it's called a thrust stage, and when the audience is on three sides, and it's how theater began. If you think about the Greek amphitheater or the Shakespeare, you know, the Globe, you know, if anybody's been there, any of those Elizabethan theaters, or even when they would perform off the back of a wagon during the plague years in England, you know, the audience would gather on three sides, and the wagon would be the stage, and so that's how theater was always done. It really wasn't until about 1800 that we started moving indoors, 1780, something like that. And then we started putting theater up in a box, you know, in a little glowing box. And I have this fanciful idea that it's one of the reasons why people don't think of artists as part of the community in the way that they think of the barber or the butcher or the baker, you know. They think of theater artists especially, or dancers, as those other people over there. And I think the proscenium stage has a lot to answer for, to be honest with you. But this is the one I like. This is the kind of space. Yes.
I think everything seems so perfect and compact as you're saying. But when I've been here for a play, the actors were running in and out of some places in the back. What's that?
Good question.
They're just these boxes with an exit sign.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's the dressing room like?
Well, that's something that Louis and Greg, and it was probably you, do you want to talk about the function of those boxes, those bombs as we call them, or was that your?
No, that was more.
Was that you?
Well, you know, the best thing about it to me is even though I have to sprint from that door to that door, I can exit down here and enter over here, which is it really adds to the dynamic, I think, of how things are just happening all around, rather than here's the action, here's the people. It's like like you're part of it. You're like the space is feeding.
It's what the theater does, the film and television and your cell phone doesn't do, and that is the spatial relationship. You know, I can touch Louis, I can move toward him, I can move away from him or toward any of you, and you know that, right? Something in your mind knows that. If you're watching a movie, no matter how well it's done, you know that it's always going to be on two planes, you know, two dimensions. And there's so in a way, it's a more communal space. It's not in a way, it is a more communal space than almost any other medium, painting or sculpture or film or photography or any of those things. And so these three boxes are called VOM, but they're sound and light blocks, which means an actor could wait to come in. There could still be light in the lobby or somebody out there talking, and you wouldn't really hear it because both those doors are closed. And that somebody had that idea. I didn't have that idea. I think it must have been.
I don't know the term.
Okay.
Short with auditorium.
It was literally.
I would call it a light block.
Yeah. It was literally in the Greek era, the actors would literally go off into the vomitoriums to throw up, because they were nervous or whatever, playing for thousands of people, and so it became known as a vomitorium. But there's three there.
Your question, or were you asking what are the dressing rooms like?
What's back there?
Yeah.
It's, it's worth it, a trip through there if you wanna see it. The new addition, is this wall is covered with the signs that are out front from all the shows.
Yeah.
Which is, that's cool.
We ran out of space.
But it's pretty small and it's unisex, so, no telling what you're gonna see back there.
It's just a long space.
It's not way across, it's only about 10 feet wide. There's a bathroom in the corner. There's a ladder that you can get up to the balcony from, so sometimes people up there that you just saw down here.
There's a ladder like you'd have on a ship, going up to the crow's nest. I've seen women in hoop skirts go up there. I think a lot has done that probably before. And then we have also an office behind the dressing room, and we have an electrical room where all the heavy machinery is. And then up in this corner where some of you can see that light there, that little 6x8 closet is my office. That's where I work at a standing desk up there, which I like very much. And then behind that, there's some more space above the bathrooms. There's a storage space for our lighting instruments, stuff like
And the
this.
sound and light boards are up there, right?
Yeah.
So whoever's controlling all the lighting and the sound effects and everything is sitting up there.
It was designed so that it can move around. There are 4 boxes around the balcony, and so we can actually put that anywhere we want, but that's the ones we typically use. And occasionally we move it around.
And I just want to add, the Burning Coal rents out this space. Our daughter got married here. And it was lovely. We had it blacked out for the wedding and, we hung extra lights, and I had a lighting person, make the lighting very slightly. And you would never know it, but it just added a glow. People and the flowers and everything. And then the next day, we opened all the shades, and the original great big windows are still here that we all had.
That's another thing. We can have natural lighting.
Yes, and it was a totally different space. It's beautiful. Bright light for the brunch in the morning, yeah. So keep it in mind. I mean, I don't know if you'll build all the time.
We have a lot of theater companies, schools, weddings, birthday parties, dance things. We're booked pretty solid right now, to be honest with you. Yeah, there's some days available, but it's pretty solid. Well, yeah, yes, sir.
One more question for Davis. Somebody, I don't know who said this, because of the intimate nature of the space, you could smell the actors. Okay. Have y'all ever experimented, we think of sound and visual, have y'all ever looked at, in the course of a production, introducing a smell or maybe that?
We're not that brave.
Scared.
I'll tell you, we did a production of Hair here in the space, and the director. Did anybody see that production? Anybody here see that production? The director was a guy from Davidson in Charlotte, a really brilliant young man, and he said during the drug scene toward the end of it, where they all take LSD, he said, I want to wrap the audience. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, trust me, we'll do this. And so there was this parachute silk up above that got opened out, and it went all the way to the edge of the balcony. And then on the balcony, on 3 sides, there were these curtains that went across, and you could close them. And so during that point, the actors came out, the tribe came out and invited everybody to come out of their seats and sit on the floor. And we go back every night, it's there, you know, and we'd have 150 people come out and sit about from where your feet are there to about where these chairs are here, just crammed in there. And, you know, this is not a young audience, you know, this was some older folks, you know, and they sat there. And it went on for maybe 15 minutes, that section of the play, and then we were gonna unwrap it and let everybody go back to their seats, and they never did. They always, you know, would say, you can stay if you want to, and they'd go, yeah, we're gonna stay. And they loved it. They loved that the actors were sitting there with them or walking through them while singing their songs and stuff. There was one other quick story I'll tell about this, and then I'll shut up, I promise. We did a play called Henry V on trapeze. It was Shakespeare's Henry V. There were 5 low-flying trapeze in the space, and that was the set. That was all the set, and a lot of the play was done in the air with aerial stuff going on and all. And we found that there were 5 seats in the theater that we had to put a sign on that said, if you sit in this chair, be prepared to duck. And I would see people walk through that door, see the signs, realize what was going on, and run toward the chair, like run to make sure they got the chair. And I thought, why would they want to get clocked in the head? Oh, because that means they're part of the show, or that means they're experiencing something. And so that to me is what a good theater space can do. It can cause people to feel like they're part of something, not just observing something.
And I like the concept for the Diary of Anne Frank, where we built a scaffold in here so that
Greg built the scaffold.
So there was you were up in the attic. It was low, you know, the floor of the balcony was the level of the stage. And so you felt like you were in the attic with
When you entered, you came to the door and you were under the stage, and you had to walk all the way down this little alleyway here, and there was a rickety staircase going up into the seats. And so usually when you see the Diary of Anne Frank, you're thinking, I should have an apartment so big, you know, because it's these giant stages, you know, but we didn't want that. We wanted the claustrophobia that is so much a part of that story. And when I approached Greg about that, he said, yeah, I'll get that done. And 2 days later, we had it done. So he's done so much for this community. Both of these gentlemen have, and Mary and Curtis too. You know, I wish he could have been here tonight. He's so interesting to listen to, so knowledgeable about things. Well, this has been fantastic. Are we in a wrapping up?